with James Dean, the Managing Director of ESL. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you very much.
All right, so the first thing I want to ask you is if you can maybe give us like a brief history of you and ESL.
I don't know if you want to go there. No, I'm joking.
Can you make it brief enough?
So I grew up as the ordinary geek, I suppose. Computer science degree, playing a lot of LAN at school. But I quickly got into the hardware industry by writing for magazines. And then in 2010, I started looking at esports in a much bigger way in terms of can I do some business here? And I opened the ESL UK office in 2012. And ESL, of course, is the largest esports company in the world.
I think everybody involved in esports has heard of ESL at the very least.
Hopefully.
Well, one thing I wanted to talk to you about is last weekend you helped host a pretty exciting event where you worked with a non-endemic company, EE, and also a traditional TV company, BT Sports, to have this Clash Royale event. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what that might even implicate for the future of esports working with these sorts of companies?
It's a great question. First of all, I think if we look at why that happened, EE, obviously mobile brand owned by BT, they were super keen to reach an audience within esports. They chose mobile esports, obviously, for many
Makes
reasons,
sense.
and they wanted to give something back to the community. So they created the EE mobile series and launched it with Clash Royale as a sort of trial. And when we were talking to them about this, we needed to figure out what a good purpose for doing it, not just trying to say, here, come and play in our tournament. So they worked with Fnatic and actually gave away a spot in their Fnatic Academy as the prize. And it was very much for the UK player base. So that was an amazing thing for all these rising stars to get an opportunity to actually play for a pro gaming team in a pro environment. So that's which really attracted everyone. It wasn't really about the prize money or anything else. It was really about that. When we actually started working with BT Sports Studio, there was obviously a lot of technical challenges, but we had a drive to get over those because the UK in its own right is very, very good at broadcasting and the media industry. Like, we have some amazing organisations here, BBC included, to create content. Obviously we're English speaking, which helps, but largely it was to demonstrate that it can really work. So we pushed for that, and thankfully it came off really, really well. I think it taught the broadcast industry a huge amount, as well as us understanding, how this could actually be sustainable and we could actually roll it out in the future. So I suppose really what we ended up with is a very, very exciting situation, not only for a demonstration of how esports can roll out on a regional level with this path to pro in effect, but also, and for mobile, but also for B2B side of things on, how can the industry really accelerate in the UK? I mean, there's some amazing TV studios in the UK.
Yeah, it's like using the resources to make the best things. I actually watched that production and it was really great. It was really impressive. So on the theme of kind of the future of esports and what's to come, one thing that's kind of been in the conversation the last couple of years is the theme of franchise leagues, which major league that's happening at the moment that does that is the Overwatch League, and there have been rumors that other leagues are kind of thinking of doing the same thing. What do you think about this as part of the future of esports?
So obviously there's always pros and cons to things. Franchise, and there's also different models of franchise leagues as well. Ultimately, the game developer owns the intellectual property of that game, so they can decide what they do with their game. At the same time, it's really important that they remember that they have to reach as many people as possible, because you want continual playing talent to drive through your ecosystem to pay for the game in the first place, because the more people playing, the more money they get, but also it has to give as wide opportunity as possible to all the players out there in the world. And for that to happen, you need to have a staggered leagues from all the way from grassroots to the top tier. So I think the danger is that if it's too much franchised, you'll actually cut off a lot of this opportunity for grassroots and those mid-tier tournaments, which is very, very endemic to the whole way the community works. But then I would say there are some better franchises, such as I'd say the way Riot approaches things, where they have 2 franchises, one in the States, one in Europe. But of course then they have an underpinning tournament system that starts on a continental level that goes all the way to the grassroots and the national leagues. So in effect they are actually, hitting all points. Now the way ESL prefers it is obviously to look at a non-franchise league and a very open community, and that's exactly how all of our tournaments work. So let's take Dota 2 and Counter-Strike, etc. It keeps us all on our toes as an industry.
Yeah.
We're all fighting for that major, for example. Innovation is happening.
Yeah.
New talent is coming through. Like as wide a player base as possible is possible. But what I suppose the biggest key is to make sure there's a sustainability.
Yeah.
And this is where the stakeholders of the tournament in its entirety need to know what is being told to them will be delivered in terms of viewership and the longevity, the teams involved, etc. And the teams need that as well. So franchises do kind of deliver that, but there are ways around it. So, for example, ESL is actually part of the World Esports Association, and that is there in order to try and create a sustainable, consistent way of delivering the CSGO Pro League, for example.
Yeah.
And that works. So the stakeholders are happy, the teams are happy,
Everyone's
we're
happy.
happy, and Valve are happy. So that's another approach. So maybe the answer is that it really does need a hybrid version of a franchise, and not to copy the traditional sports model too much.
You have to find the happy medium.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you were just on a panel talking about what's going to come next in the world of esports, and one of the things that was brought up quite a bit as a topic was about how long tournaments are, these broadcasts are, because one of your co-speakers on the panel was saying how, originally you'd have these 5-day tournaments and then people wanted them to be shorter, and now they complain about these 8-hour tournaments, and should we bring them down to be shorter and shorter and more digestible? But when you look at esports as a whole, when you look at it holistically, you see a lot of tournaments that still have these week-long competitions, and the viewership is really high. So what do you personally think about this when it comes to the future of esports?
So obviously there's a huge amount of content out there, and we've only got 24 hours in the day, so we have to pick and choose what we get involved in. I don't believe that every esport will get shorter. I think there are examples where maybe particular tournaments are based like that, but I think if we look at an average of a viewer right now today, the average is around 40 minutes, let's say, which is roughly the length of a game.
Yeah.
So what we'd probably expect that some viewers are maybe watching just 5 minutes, but some viewers are watching the whole day.
Yeah.
And some viewers will come in and just watch their favourite team play and then go again. There's also an aspect of switching devices as well. I might be watching at home on my computer, but then I might go downstairs, switch my TV on, or maybe I'll go and catch the bus and look at it on my phone, right? So in effect, and we see this from the traditional sports industry as well, basically it has to serve different needs. It doesn't mean that people aren't less involved or less interested. I don't think there's any perfect example, but ultimately it's down to listening to what the community are wanting, and that's, you just look at the stats for that and react to it, and also thinking about personalizing to individuals and saying, well, not everyone is the same. Some people want to get the 5-minute highlights, some people want to sit there for 3 days and get every minute of the action. And depending on what game it is, depending on what tournament it is, depending who's hosting, whatever, people will do that.
Yeah. Well, lastly, I want to ask, what are you most looking forward to in the world of esports this coming year?
That's a good question. I think, so personally, obviously, we've got ESL 1 Birmingham.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew it.
We've also got ESL Pro League coming to the UK, which is very exciting. I would say, really, as an industry, though, it's more non-endemic brands coming into the space. They're really driving a lot of content. They don't come and just slap a sponsorship onto a tournament.
Yeah.
They're all about trying to engage with that user. And to do that, they have to give value. And if they're giving value, that probably means the tournament's going to be better somehow. So I think really we're seeing the worlds align, the stars align for that sort of activity. So we've got some great brands coming in. We just saw Shell, I know, like come in for League of Legends. But of course ESL, we've got Vodafone, Mercedes, lots of others. Obviously Intel getting bigger and bigger in the space, just committing $100 million to and then of course new games, of course. We can't forget, like, one of the most exciting things about this industry is that we don't know what game's going to be big next. I'm personally playing Command & Conquer Rivals and loving it. And I also, because I'm quite old, I got into World of Warships as well. But anyway.
Well, that's all pretty exciting. Thank you so much for speaking to us, and best of luck for the coming year and everything after that with ESL. And we can't wait to see what you do.
Lovely, thanks.